Hello and welcome back to Rule the Game. In today's video, I'll show you how to play Harmonies, a game by Johan Benvenuto. A game for 1 to 4 players, lasts about 30 minutes, and it's recommended starting at age 10. As usual, I'll show you first how to get points here, then how to play the game. I'll give you some hints for your first game, and then I'll show you at the very end how to set up the game. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe below so that you get to see more videos like this one where I show you how to play new games. Please note that I won't explain the solo version of the game here. For that, you have to go into an instruction manual. And also there's an advanced version that includes some nature spirit cards. That is only recommended after you've played it a few times. I will not explain that either.
Rule the game.
In Harmonies, you build a landscape with trees and mountains and fields and water and so on, and you also gather some animals, and you get points for all of them at the end of the game. Let's have a look at the board, what it could look like at the end of a game. Now in this game you don't get points during the game, but all of the points come at the end of the game. For this you have here the scorecards that you can use to sum up all your points. Now I'm going to go with you through these points step by step, and we start first by looking at your board. The main board here has different tiles on it. It also has these different cubes on it. I need to tell you first, cubes don't give you any points, but the different tiles give you points depending on how you set them up. On this card here, you will see a guide for how you get points. Now note that there's also a backside to this card, which is the B side, which you could also play, but it requires that you also flip the board around and play it on the other side. For the first games, it's recommended that you play on this side. First, on your board, you're going to get points for your trees. A tree can be just a canopy, or it can be trunks, 1 or 2 trunks, and then a canopy on top. These give you points, while just trunks without a canopy doesn't give you any points at all. So in this case, we have here a tree that has 2 trunks on the bottom. That gives you 7 points. We have here 4 different canopies that are just the canopy and no trunk. Those give you 1 point. So in total, we have 7 plus 4 is 11. For the mountains, you get points the taller they are, of course, too. So in this case, for a mountain that is 3 tall, you get 7 points, but only if it is connected to another mountain. That's what this chain symbol down here is supposed to show. So for this mountain that is 3 tall, you get 7 points plus 1 point for this one here, that gives 8. But this mountain here, even though it is 2 tiles tall, it doesn't give you any points because it's not connected, meaning there's no other mountain around it. For the fields, you get 5 points every time you have at least 2 fields together. If you have more than 2 fields, that still gives you only 5 points. So you're trying to have as many areas with just 2 fields next to each other as possible, because all of them give you 5 points. This will give you 5 points, this will give you 5 points. If you had just 1 field, that's 0 points. Cities always have to be 2 tall, and only if they're too tall they can actually be scored. And even then, they only get scored if they have at least 3 different colors around them. So in this case, this one is not too tall, gives you 0 points. This one is too tall, has 4 colors around it actually, or even 5. That one gives you then the 5 points. Over here, you only have 2 colors around it, the green and the blue, so you don't get any points for this one. This one here also has 3 colors around it, gives you 5 points too. So we get 10 points from these 2 buildings. And last but not least, we get points for the longest river that we have. Now we only have 1 river here, and the way you count the rivers is also that you take the shortest distance from the 2 points that are furthest away from each other. So what we have here is 4 tiles in a row, and this one here doesn't actually count, even though you could do zigzagging here, but zigzagging is not allowed. You're only allowed to go straight. So that's 4 in a row, and you see that here 4 is 8 points. Should you get to 6 in a row, you get 15 points. 7 is plus 4, so 19, and so on. And then after you have scored all these different colors on your board, you then look at your animal cards that you have here. The animal cards can sometimes also be already turned around because some of them might be finished. I'll show you later what that means to be finished. If you have a finished card, you just turn it around and you get the points here that are written up on the top here, the 17 points for this card because it's finished. You'll put that number here in this field. For cards that still have cubes on, you count the points that are underneath the topmost fields that is empty. So in this case, 10 points. In this case, it's 6 points. And in this case, all the fields are full. So for this card, you actually don't get any points at all. And then you sum up the points that you got from the structures that you built, plus the points that you get from all these animal cards. And whoever has the most points at the end wins. And in case 2 players are tied at the end of the game, then the player who has the most cubes on their board wins. Harmonies is a turn-based game. On each turn, the active player has to play one action, and they can decide if they want to play 2 different actions. Let me show you this on the board here. Each player has a player board where they might already build something. This obviously is in the middle of a game. The player also has already collected 3 animal cards. Up here we have the common board where you get your different area tokens, and up here you have more animal cards. On the player's turn, they have to play the following action. They have to take 3 of these little tiles up here on one of these plates. You can't mix. You have to take 3 of one of these 5 blocks. You have to take them and you have to place them somewhere on your board. Now you don't have to place them all right away. You can also play the other 2 actions in between. One action, an optional action that you have, and you can do this one only once during your turn. You can take one of these animal cards and you can place it in front of you. If you do so, you also have to take as many cubes as you have fields on your card. In this case, I have 2, so I put those 2 cubes on it. And now this action is done. As you can see, I can only have 4 cards here on my board. More is not allowed, so I'm currently full now with the cards. You'll see in a moment how you can get rid of cards here so that you can actually get new cards afterwards. So now we go and play some of these tiles here. Now to place tiles, you first have to know what the rules are. The rules depend on the color of your tile. Now for the yellow tiles, as well as for the blue tiles, they can never be stacked. Fields and water are always just a single layer, as you can see here the way it's placed so far. When it comes to the canopies, they can be placed by themselves or they can be placed on trunks. You can go up to a maximum of 2 trunks plus a canopy. As for mountains, you can place 1, 2, or 3 on top of each other. And as for the buildings, they can be placed by themselves, as you can see here, or they can be placed on top of another building, or they can be placed on top of a trunk, I guess that's a tree house, or they can be placed on top of a mountain, which is probably a mountain house. So I decide that I'm going to place this building here on top of this trunk. So far nothing happens. Now, let's assume I'm going to place this tile here afterwards. As you can see, with the red one and the 2 yellow ones, I now fulfill this condition here. I have a red one and 2 yellow ones. Since I fulfill this condition, I will now take the lowest remaining cube here from this card and I place it wherever the card tells me to place it, in this case on top of the building. To fulfill a condition, the height of the stack as well as the color of the tiles has to match. So in this case, you really need to have 3 mountains on top of each other with a yellow next to it. You also notice on these cards that on the side, they have different color, and the color always matches where the cube is going to sit at the end. As you can see here, I have 4 different colors. I have gray, blue, red, and green, which means that I will place the cubes on tiles of different color. That's also actually recommended. You should try to not have cards of the same color, because if you did, you would have to place cubes on tiles of the same color, and you can never place more than 1 cube on 1 tile. Just as you cannot place another tile on top of a cube. Now, however, if you fulfill a condition twice, like I would do if I place this tile here, I've actually fulfilled this one now twice. I'll fulfill it from here down, but also from here up, which means from here down, I will place a cube down here. From here up, I'll place the cube over here. So as you can see here, the orientation of the condition is not a requirement. It's just the requirement that they're in the order that it says here. In this case, they're always in a row. But as you can see over here, they could be in a triangle, or they could be in something like this. Now, as you can see, this card now doesn't have any cubes on it anymore, which means it's done, and I'll turn it around and put it next to my board. And that was already my turn. I had to take tiles. I had to place them somewhere. I was allowed to take here an animal card if I wanted to, then fill it with the cubes, and then I could place cubes from here if I fulfill the condition. That's the end of my turn. I'm done here. What we do now is we prepare for the next player. So I'm going to place here 3 new tiles on the board, and I will also take here a new card and place it right here. And now it's the next player's turn. The end of the game is triggered once there are no tiles in the bag left, when you would have to refill here this board, or when the first player has only 2 or less tiles left on their puzzle. In that case, you'll finish the round, meaning you play to the player who's before the starting player, and the starting player is shown here by this arrow pointing at one of the players. So the person before the starting player will have a turn 2, and then the round's finished, the game's finished, and we start scoring. And here are some hints for the first game. The game is called Harmonies because you're trying to achieve a very good balance between the tiles of different color, but also different animal cards. It is unlikely, very unlikely, that he can win by really fully betting on just one thing, be it now in putting together the best puzzle that he can, or putting together the nicest animal cards and fulfilling them all at once. So far, I've seen a difference of maybe up to plus minus 20 points between landscapes and animal cards, but that's the most I've seen if a person actually wanted to win the game. In other cases, usually people bet too heavily on one or the other, and then they couldn't win the game. You might not want to play too flat, meaning you might not want to play without building taller mountains or even tall trees, because they give you more points. And the other issue is that if you only play 1 layer per tile that you can place, if you only have 1 layer, you don't get many points and the game's over very quickly, which means you usually don't even get points then from your animal cards because you can't really fulfill too many of them. There are some animal cards that allow you to get points from just 2 tiles that are next to each other and that are not even stacked. They are there, but they don't really give you many points. You usually get more points if you stack the trees and the mountains higher. And of course, you can never forget that you have to put 2 tiles on top of each other with the building on top if you want to get any of the building points. And as I said earlier, you're going to try to not take too many cards of the same color, because in that case, you're going to have to put the cubes always on the same color tiles, and you won't get so many of the same color. And the other issue is that usually the cubes go on the tallest of your stacks, And then you have to build another tall stack. That's tricky because you won't really be able to build too many tall ones. And that's Harmonies. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please subscribe to the channel. And if you still want to see how to set up the game, check out the next section. To set up the game, each player gets a personal board here that we set up on this side of the board. That's recommended for the first few games. This one is more for advanced players. We then also take here the board for the tiles. You take here the version for the 2 to 4 players, not this one. And you point the arrow towards the player who's going to be the first player. That way, you always know who has actually started the game. You then put all the tiles in the bag, you shuffle them, and you place 3 of them on each of these little areas. You then shuffle the animal cards, and you put 5 cards out. Next, you put the orange cubes here in the middle so that everybody can reach them. There's also a deck here of Nature Spirit cards. Those are also recommended for advanced players. We're going to put them aside for the first game. And then there's a player's guide here. There should be enough for each player that you can put next to each other. You select here the sides that has here the chain of water and not the blue side. And that's it. You're ready to get started.